A pleasant day. Today we will be having BSEE 25 Language Programs and Policies in Multilingual Society. We'll be having now our lesson 2, Language in Education Policy Evolution. This is Ms. Gothelin D. Baes, your instructor for this subject. For this video presentation, I'll be resourceful for our presentation. I'll be using different websites for this lesson. And then later on, I'll be giving that site for you for your references. So the first one is, let me present this one also. Okay. And then this lesson will be having bilingualism. So permission for me to use bilingualism because I will be using Filipino language and English for this one. For the first part, ang timeline po ng kasaysayan ng wikang pambansa. So to start with, this is with Saligang Batas ng Biyak na Bato. This is from 1896. Ang wikang Tagalog ang magiging opisyal na wika ng Pilipinas. So, nabanggit ko nga kanina sa ating introduction na iba't ibang polisiya na mayroon sa lengguwaheng Pilipino ang tatalakayin natin, no? At makikita nyo no, yung evolution na mayroon tayo dito. At una na nga riyan ay yung lengguwaheng Tagalog. Lahat naman tayo ay familiar kung ano yung Tagalog. Ginagamit nga to sa parteng itaas, no? Dito nga sa Luzon at iba-iba pa yung Tagalog na sinasabi natin dahil nabanggit ko na rin ito sa ating lesson 1. So ito yung naan dito, no, sa Saligang Batas ng Biyak na Bato. Ang sumunod dito ay ang Philippine Constitution, Batas 74 noong 1901. Dito naman, naging Ingles ang opisyal na wikang pambansa. Ito rin ang naging medium na ginagamit sa mga paaralan. Pag sinabi natin ginagamit na medium sa paaralan, sa school, ginagamit yung language na yon. Halimbawa, noong 1901, nagsimula na gamitin sa pagtuturo at pag-aaral yung lengguwaheng Ingles dahil nga po sa Philippine Commission Batas 74. Sunod riyan ay ang paggamit ng vernacular sa pagtuturo. Dito naman yung vernacular, ito yung dialekto na binanggit ko din sa ating lesson 1 na mayroon nga dito sa ating bansang Pilipinas dahil tayo ay binubuo ng mahigit 7,000 pulo, no? Kaya po tayo ay may iba't ibang dialekto o vernacular na lengguwahe. At sa noong 1931 ay inimungkahi na gamitin ang vernacular ng iba't ibang lugar sa pagtuturo sa primaryang antas. Ito ay mula kay George C. Booth, ang vice-gobernador na kalihim ng pampublikong edukasyon noong 1930. Dahil nga po ay mother tongue pa rin yung ating tinatawag na basis ng lengguwahe sana, no? Kumbaga kung ano yung kinakalakhan nating lengguwahe, yun sana yung magamit na lengguwahe o matutunang lengguwahe simula pagkabata natin. At hanggang ngayon naman ay binibigyan nating halaga yung ating mother tongue. At sumunod dito, no, yung 1935 na Saligang Batas, Artikulo 14, Section 3. Noong 1935 nga po ito, ang Kongreso ay gagawa ng mga hakbang tungo sa pagpapaunlad at pagpapatibay ng isang wikang pambansa na batay sa isa sa mga umiiral na katutubong wika hanggang hindi nagtatadhana. Ayan. Dahil nga po no sa ating bansa, iba-iba yung lengguwahe na meron tayo. Kaya po dito sa saligang batas na ito ay pagbibigyan tuon na kung ano ba talaga yung gagamitin nating lengguwahe dito sa ating bansa. Ayan po. Ano ba yung mismong pambansang wika na tinatawag sa ating bansa? Kaya ito ay sinundan ng Batas Commonwealth 1/8 noong 1936. Ito yung surian ng wikang pambansa na natasang pumili sa isang katutubong wika na magiging batayan ng wikang pambansa. At sumunod na riyan noong 1937, sumunod na taon, kautosang tagaganap bilang 134, kautosang tagaganap bilang 134 ng Pangulong Quezon. Ang wikang pambansa ay ibabatay sa wikang Tagalog. Ayan nga po, no, makikita natin dito sa timeline yung Tagalog, Filipino, and Filipino. No? Kaya titignan natin kung ano nga ba yung pagkakaiba nila. Sunod riyan ay ang Batas Commonwealth bilang 570 noong 1940. Simula sa Hulyo 4, 1946, ang Tagalog ay isa sa mga opisyal na wikang pambansa. Yun na po yung itinalaga. At noong 1954, Linggo ng Wika, inutos ng Pangulong Magsaysay ang taunang pagdiriwang nito para sa ating bansa. No? Kaya tayo sa paaralan, may mga Linggo ng Wika tayo. At nakakalungkot lang din dahil nga sa pandemya na mayroon tayo ngayon ay wala pa po ulit na mga ganoong programa. Magkakaroon siguro pero online din po, no? Sunod na riyan ay ang Pilipino, ang pambansang wika. Kanina Tagalog po. Ngayon, 1959, tinawag na Pilipino ang wikang pambansa ng lagdaan ang kautosang bilang 7. Ayan, simula naging Tagalog po yung ating pambansang wika hanggang sa naging Pilipino po ang ating pambansang wika. Ano po? Noong 1959. Sumunod na po riyan ay, ayan, dati po 'di ba nabanggit yung Ingles yung gagawing medium sa pagtuturo sa eskwelahan, pero hindi nga po maaari 'yon kaya hindi 'yon nagtagal. Kaya noong 1973 nagkaroon ng resolusyong nagsasaad na gagamiting medium sa pagtuturo ang sa lahat ng paaralan ng Pilipinas, ang wikang Pilipino po. Ayan, so hindi pa rin natin iwawaglit sa yung ating mismong wikang pambansa. Kumbaga yung wikang Ingles ay sekundarya lamang sa kung ano ba yung wikang pambansa talaga na mayroon tayo sa ating bansa. Sumunod na riyan at ang pinakahuli po sa timeline natin sa kasaysayan ng wikang pambansa ay ang 1987 Constitution na ito na po yung binigyang diin yung wikang pambansa natin na Filipino. Kaya po naman siya naging Filipino dahil binibigyan na po o kinikilala na po yung ibang letra na mula sa ibang alpabeto. Kaya dun sa English alphabet nga po na tinatawag, kaya po ginamit na po no yung letrang F para sa ating wikang pambansa. Kaya po ang wikang pambansa natin simula pa noong 1987, wag pong kakalimutan, ay Filipino po. So hindi na po yan Tagalog o hindi na po yan Pilipino, ano po. Ang wikang pambansa na po natin ay Filipino. At from that constitution, we will be having now our lesson that is bilingualism. Like what you've said in our subject orientation, you've mentioned that you're familiar with bilingualism, but this time we will be checking the policy that we are having in our country, the Philippines, under bilingualism. Since I've mentioned the Constitution or the different kinds of policy that we had in our country up to its 1987, we will be having now the BEP or the Bilingual Education Policy. And we will be having here another resourceful reference from Prezi. This is from Chris Lee. Thank you for sponsoring this presentation, Chris Lee. And of course, for the president, for the timeline ng kasaysayan ng wikang pambansa. Again, let's have now the presentation from Chris Lee for the bilingual policy. Let me make this bigger for you guys. Okay. So now let's have the bilingual policy. We will be having what is the bilingualism, what is bilingual education, what is the bilingual education policy in the Philippines, the goals of bilingual education policy, and the bilingual education and the use of vernacular. Like what I've said, vernacular are those dialects from different places of our country. So let's start with what is bilingualism. So, bilingualism is the phenomenon of speaking and understanding two or more languages Actually, in grammar, when we say by, it is just two. But in our language, we'll be having again the dialect aside from the language or the two languages that we will be tackling for this one. That's why it is two or more. The term can refer to individuals or individual bilingualism as well as to an entire society or social bilingualism. When we say bilingualism po kasi, no, ayan, yung ginagamit nating lengguwahe bilang individual at kung ano ba yung na-encounter natin with our society. So we will be still considering the social bilingualism, not just our individual bilingualism. So next one is that what is bilingual education? So this is local based. Bilingual education is a form of education in which information is presented to the student in two or more languages, again, with the dialect. Technically, any educational system that utilizes more than one language is bilingual. So, in our case, in our class setup in the Philippines, we are using two major languages, the Filipino and the English languages, in teaching, no? Or our medium of teaching is English and Filipino. So, if ever you will be meeting your class na din in the future, ganito din yung mangyayari sa inyo, no? Bilingual talaga yung gagawin nyo as your medium of instruction to your students. Next is bilingual education also refers to the practice of teaching non-English speaking children in their native language. Again, bilingual education also refers to the practice of teaching non-English speaking children. Of course, for example, you encounter your student, they're not yet familiar with English as our universal language. We need to oblige them to use it or to learn about using it for them for their improvement and for them to use it in the near future or for their profession. And as they grow, they also need to learn how to speak in English aside from their native language. Developed in 1960s, such programs were intended to allow children to progress in subjects such as math, science, and social studies while they learned English as a separate class. So dati po no, parang sa ibang mga subjects lang talaga inagamit ng English as medium of instruction for the subject. Pero later on, we will be digging deeper to it. Ano-ano ba yung mga subjects na under ng English, ano ba yung subjects na under ng Filipino. So, yun. And then for the bilingual education policy in the Philippines, this is what I'm talking about. The policy was first implemented in 1974 when DEX, the former DepEd, the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, issued Department Order number 25 or number 25 series of 1974 titled Implementing Guidelines for the Policy on Bilingual Education. So, bilingual education in the Philippines defined operationally as the separate use of Filipino and English as the media or medium of instruction in specific subjects. As embodied in the Dex Order number 25, Filipino changed to Filipino in 1987. The Commission 1987 shall be used as medium of instruction in social studies or social sciences, music, arts, physical education, home economics, practical arts, and character education. So for our local context, yung gagamitan daw po ng Filipino language as medium of instruction sa school ay yung mga subjects under daw po ng social studies or social sciences, MAPE, no, yung music, arts, physical education, home economics, practical arts, character education. And then, for the English language naman, dapat daw po yung sciences, subjects, mathematics, technology subjects, required po yon, no, under this commission. Pero, of course, it is still based on the preference of the teacher. Kasi, like, halimbawa, sa PE or sa MAPE, 'di ba, we will be still using Filipino language. Halimbawa, yung example ay katutubong sayaw, 'di ba? So hindi naman natin masasabi na foreign talaga yung mga sayaw na 'yan. So Filipino pa rin yung gagamitin na medium of instruction ng mga teachers natin. So basically, this presentation shows no kung ano ba yung umiikot sa paaralan. Ano ba yung mga ginagamit na lengguwahe? Kasi nga bilingualism is about yung language na ginagamit, no. So yung mga dinidiscuss ko are about what is revolving around the education system of our country, or like what I've said, this is localized policy. So this is what is happening in our schools, public man yan or private. So even in the universities, of course, private or public universities. And this revolves this policies under language programs. So next one is the policy, is as follows. No, the policy on bilingual education aims at the achievement of competence in both Filipino and English at the national level through the teaching of both languages and their use as media of instruction at all level. So ito talaga yung yung gustong target, no? Kung yung mga estudyante nyo, no, they are fluent in Filipino, of course, and they're also fluent in using English as their medium of learning. So we achieved this policy, no? We targeted this policy successfully. Kasi yun naman talaga yung aim ng bilingual education. Again, at all levels. The regional languages shall be used as auxiliary languages in grades 1 to 2. So this is what I'm talking about a while ago. So dapat yung mother tongue ng mga bata ay hindi pa rin mawawala. So like what's happening right now, no, ang dami ko na experience yung mga bata talaga, no, relative man or hindi. Nagkaroon ng struggle yung mga bata na magsalita ng Filipino or yung native tongue talaga ay gamitin kasi nga na familiarize sila with the foreign languages because of the technology, because of their gadgets, because of their tablets, phones, because of YouTube, okay? So yung mga yung mga accent pa nga nila is based pa dun sa mga napapanood nila. And it's a great dilemma under primary teachers, no, kasi hindi nila masolusyonan ng sila lang. So, kailangan pa rin ng guidance ng parents, ng mga estudyante na turuan silang mag-Filipino. So, hindi lang dapat English. So, kumbaga commendable na from early age or early stage of their lives, marunong na sila ng foreign language, but still, they need to use our native language, which is Filipino or the Tagalog or Filipino, okay? The aspiration of the Filipino nation is to have its citizens possess skills in Filipino to enable them to perform their functions and duties in order to meet the needs of the country in the community of nations. So, ito pa rin talaga yung end point. Ayan, to possess skills in Filipino para sa mga future endeavors nila, no? Future paths na meron yung mga estudyante natin. So, they still need to value our languages, so the Filipino and the English. So, this is what bilingual education in the Philippines is. Next one is the language policy of the Commission on Higher Education. So this is under CHED. So in 1994 rather, the Republic Act number 7722, creating the Commission on Higher Education, was signed. This act, which is known as the Higher Education Act of 1994, provides that the CHED shall be independent and separate from the DEX or from the DepEd. Its coverage shall be both public and private institutions of higher education as well as degree granting programs in all post-secondary educational institutions, public and private. Like what I've said, hindi po pwedeng mawala yung Filipino subject sa colleges o sa mga university. Kasi nga po, again, meron po tayong Republic Act number 7722. Kung naging viral po or naging maingay po before yung pagtatanggal ng mga Filipino subjects sa college, ay hindi po yun aprobado, no? Hindi po talaga siya matutuloy kasi inihiwalay pa po sa DepEd. Again, DEX pa nga po yun eh. Department of Education, Culture, and Sports pa yung nag-usap, and then the CHED sa pagpo-provide ng Filipino subjects into higher education or into universities and colleges, private man or public. So, wala tayong karapatan na iwanan yung mga asignaturang Filipino na mayroon tayo sa ating ikatlong parte ng edukasyon, 'di ba, sa ating kolehiyo. Hindi puwede pa ring alisin 'yon. Kaya kailangan pa rin po. Kasi it is all because of the Republic Act number 7722 last 1994. The requirements of the new JEC or global education concepts are embodied in the CHED Memorandum Order or CMO number 559 series of 1996 listed under miscellaneous of the CMO or the CHED Memorandum Order is its language policy, which is as follows. So for this one, in consonance with the bilingual education policy underlined index order number 52 series of 1987, the following are the guidelines vis-a-vis medium of instruction to wit. Language courses, whether Filipino or English, should be taught in that language. Again, aside from the subjects na binanggit ko kanina, no, yung sa pang-DEX or pang-DepEd, kahit tayo, no, sa ating university, kailangan pa rin po na matutunan natin or makarinig tayo ng turo o instructions from our teachers in Filipino or English language. Kailangan both pa din. Okay? And at the discretion of the higher education institution or HEI, literature subjects must be taught in Filipino, English, or any other language as long as there are enough instructional materials for the same and both students and instructors or professors are competent in that or in the language. So, for example, wag na tayo lumayo, no, sa mga naging Filipino subjects ko, kahit yun ay Filipino, if there is a need to use English, you know, or English words or English examples of stories or literary pieces, nakakapagbigay pa rin, no? So, students can relate pa rin naman. And then as well as with our subject, BSEE 25, this is English subject. But if there is a need to use Filipino, and giving instruction or to use in medium of instruction, we will be still using Filipino language in our subject. So bear with me if ever there are Filipino examples or yeah, even different languages or foreign languages. Okay, so bear with me on that because this is under the Dex Order number 52, series of 1987 still. Okay? Courses in the humanities and social sciences should be preferably be taught in Filipino. So again, still it is under the basis of the teacher. Kung ano ba talaga, kung paano niya ibibigay yung instruction niya. But wala naman yun, no? Kumbaga hindi naman pa rin nalabag yung teacher in giving different kinds of medium of instruction sa pagtuturo, kung English man yan o Filipino. So, basta, yung pinaka-aim or goal nito ay magkaroon tayo ng bilingual learning. So, yung bilingualism na tinatawag ay mapossess ng bawat isa, teacher man o ng estudyante. Next is the goals of the bilingual education policy. So, shall be, first one is to enhance learning through two languages to achieve quality education as called for by the 1987 Constitution. So, paulit-ulit na tayo. So, ang target natin are two languages, Filipino and English. Second one is the propagation of the Filipino as the language of literacy. Huwag pa rin pong iiwanan yung ating mother tongue. Third is the development of the Filipino as a linguistic symbol of national unity and identity. Sabi nga po no sa Gen Ed 11, no, nabanggit ko lang din dati na dahil sa wika no, nagkakaroon tayo ng identidad. Kung marunong tayo mag-Filipino, kasi may background tayo bilang Filipino. So, yun. So, identity po, no, and unity. Nagkakaisa tayo bilang Filipino is because of our language. Ayan, linguistic symbol or language symbol po yung tinatawag. Fourth is the cultivation and elaboration of Filipino as a language of scholarly discourse, that is to say, the continuing intellectualization. So, based on my experience, no, ayan, may mga professors ako na uh, sa Filipino and English, of course, yung ginagamit nila, no? Pero kapag Filipino major talaga, ayan, makikita natin scholarly discourse yung mga nagagawa nilang outputs, yung mga nabibigay sa amin na instruction, medium of instruction, activities, and the likes, no? Kasi nga po, pinagtutuunan nila yan ng pansin. And also with those professor that had English as their major. So, parehas yon, no? They do have continuing of intellectualization because of that. And then lastly is the maintenance of English as an international language for the Philippines and as a non-exclusive language of science and technology. So still, ayan nga po, no, pinakita na po yung mga polisiya under Filipino and English language para po sa paggamit natin into our growth and development. Also improvement in the use of language or in the use of different languages. Next one is, this is the last part of this presentation, the bilingual education and the use of the vernacular as medium of instruction in the Philippines. Actually, class, from other parts of the Philippines, nabanggit ko na din sa lesson 1, no? Even their magazines, even their newspapers, ginagamit nila yung vernacular language nila or yung dialect nila mismo dun sa region or dun sa place nila. It is because binibigyan pa rin talaga ng importance yung vernacular or yung dialect ng iba't ibang region or places in the Philippines. Before the question of what language to use in the classroom has been one of the most persistent problems in the Philippines education. At the introduction of the American school system in the country, the first question that the educator had to tackle was the medium of instruction. Nabanggit ko na nga kanina, no, dun sa timeline na naitalaga din na gawing Ingles ang wikang pambansa sa ating bansa. Pero yun, nagkaroon din talaga ng problema. Lalong-lalo na sa kung ano ba yung gagamitin sa eskwelahan na medium of instruction. After long debates, English was adopted as the language of the schools, and the Philippines launched a bold experiment on human understanding. So for this one, hindi din ganun naging kalawak, no, yung experiment, pero nagkaroon naman ng result din dito na naging helpful up to this time, up to the present time. With regard to teaching in the vernaculars, the Monroe Commission recommended experimentation in the use of the vernacular, but it was only in 1948 such experiment was undertaken in Iloilo. So yung sa kanina, sabi ko nga din yung mga ginagamit na dialect, no, sa school, sa magazines, sa newspapers, even in broadcasting, no, meron pa rin sa ibang lugar dito sa Pilipinas. Yung ginagamit nila. Kumbaga, halimbawa, dito sa Pilipinas or dito sa Cavite, di ba? Naririnig natin sa broadcasting or nakikita natin sa newspaper ay lengguaheng Filipino or English, no, sa ibang parts ng Philippines, no, may gumagamit pa rin po ng vernacular. Pati po sa schools nila. Ayan. So, furthermore, for the experiment, favorable results revealed that the local dialects could be used to a greater advantage by children in the early stages of their education. So, helpful naman din talaga po yung native tongue or yung mother tongue na tinatawag. With this result, the superintendents of the schools approved a wider use of the vernacular in the schools. This change in traditional policy was primarily aimed for the wider benefit of the children and the nation, that even the private schools and the press showed interest in this emerging educational practice. So, yan nga po. Kumbaga, yun yung pinagdaanan pa rin ng iba't ibang lengguwahe na meron tayo sa Philippines. So, English, Filipino, and the vernaculars or the dialects. So, okay, kaya wag pa rin po natin kakalimutan yung mga yon. Okay? And then this one, the Board of National Education also presented a policy recommendation on the language of instruction, namely that Filipino be the main language of instruction at the elementary level, with provision for the use of vernacular languages in the first two grades. Parang nabanggit ko na rin siya, so inuulit lang din dahil nga ito ay from the Board of National Education. Second is that Filipino and English be the languages of instruction in the secondary and higher level. So again, sa high school and college. To ensure the success of the program, the recommendation also provides that intensive teacher education programs be introduced, both pre-service and in-service, to train teachers in the use of Filipino and the vernacular languages as media of instructions. As stated in the 1973 Philippine Constitution, made Filipino and English as official languages of the country. Again, 1987, yan. Kaya Filipino na po yun, no? Filipino and English po, yung languages na gagamitin natin into our country. Again, in the near future, you becoming teachers, no, you need also to use two different languages. So, kung magkakapagbigay ka pa nga ng examples using your own dialect, halimbawa, may probinsya ka, no? You can also use that para maturo sa mga estudyante mo na hindi familiar sa native tongue na meron ka. You can also introduce that to your students para lang additional information about the language na meron tayo sa Philippines. So, pwede siya, no? And then, since ako, no, katutubong, Cavite talaga, tubong Cavite talaga, ayan, wala pa akong ibang, alam na dialektong Filipino, Tagalog lang talaga or yung Filipino lang talaga. And then, as well as the English, of course, since that is my major, and that is what we had, still, no, same as you, ganun pa rin naman yung encounter namin with the education policy of the Philippines regarding the language program na meron sa mga schools. So, Filipino and English. That's why I can also use that as my medium of instruction in teaching. So that's it for the lesson 2 in our BSEE. And then I hope you had a great time with this one. And then you can also try to review and research more about this. And then wait for the activity. Thank you for listening. Once again, I am Miss Bluffeline, your instructor in this subject. Thank you.